Hey there. So it's not really hard to figure out my favorite horror franchises, and since I wanted to do a special Halloween edition of my vlog today, what I thought I'd talk about are well, two actually. Let's see if I can get this to go down here. So if you look over here, you can see the Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th. As an 80s kids, those were two of the seminal franchises that I grew up with, the ones that I really enjoyed, and one kind of went out. So I recently did a retrospective on the Halloween series. So something is telling me that it's time to talk about the other two big series in the franchises in the 1980s, which were Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, this is going to be more just a quick overview with a ranking than it will be like a complete retrospective. That I will do down the road, but right now let's start off with since I really like Friday the 13th. Let's start off with Nightmare on Elm Street. In 1984, Wes Craven created A Nightmare on Elm Street, and it would change things as far as horror went. Not just in the way that horror films were made, but in the way that they came out, in the way that they were marketed. Elm Street became a phenomenon. Freddy became a huge crossover into into music videos, which were huge at the time. Later on to a TV series, to different comic books by different companies, and even rap albums. So Freddy would really cross over, even having unofficial songs sung about him, like Nightmare on My Street with DJ Jazzy Jeff the Fresh Prince. So the other big thing that Nightmare on Elm Street did before anybody else was it put out what was at the time considered the definitive horror box set to buy. If you were a horror fan, this was something that you needed to have in your collection. It was a badge of honor to actually come across it. And for a long time, it used to be really expensive, but now you can actually get it for fairly cheap. And that would be the Nightmare on Elm Street collection. As you can see, just by the way that this is done, it's a really nicely put together set. From having the Nightmare 7 Freddy, to having the classic Freddy Krueger, to basically having him having the spines have Freddy along the case of it. Now, each one had like really cool artwork. So I'll show you a couple. So you'd have the classic ones like that, and this is my favorite out of all of them. This art here for Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Hands down, my favorite artwork that's on any of these here discs. Let's see if I need like 4 or 5. You'd have and as you can see, what they did was they had the art unobstructed, and they just had the name put down below. What was even cooler with this one is that they would include a Nightmare Series Encyclopedia, which kind of plays like a game with a bunch of features that you can unlock, including like different music videos, different parts of the different parts of the film that were like kind of deleted sequences and such. It came with a really cool book, and in that book, since part 6 had a 3D sequences in it, and it actually gave you the anaglyph 3D glasses there as well. So, needless to say, it was a much coveted piece of the collection. If you're a horror fan, let's face it, you probably had this. I gotta grab a drink, I'll be right back. For years, it was pretty simple to have somebody tell you like what was their favorite or least favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie. When it came to least favorite, people would usually tend to go towards either number 2 or number 5. And later on, thankfully, number 6 became kind of a least favorite in a lot of people's eyes. So what's mine? Well, let's just do pretty much a ranking of if you haven't See the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Basically, what it is there's a character by the name of Fred Krueger that killed these kids a long time ago on Elm Street. He is, vigilante justice is done by the parents. The they capture him. They burn him alive when he gets off on a technicality. He comes back as a as a dream demon type monster with a scarred face to actually haunt the kids of the parents that burned him and get revenge. It goes. That's pretty much the gist of what you need to know to follow the Nightmare on Elm Street series. The From least to best, I guess ranking is the best way just to do this. So it's not going to be really hard for the least favorite. That's actually the remake. I like some of the things that they wanted to do with the remake, but I feel that at the end of the day, the makeup was horrible. The plot was really cookie cutter and played it way too safe. And you can't have a twist that's not a twist. In the remake of Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, spoiler alert, the big shock is that Freddy Krueger is a bad guy. Yeah, there's a portion of this movie where you think they're going to twist it and say that Freddy Krueger is actually innocent, which would have been a really ballsy move to do, and I would have preferred that actually if they would have done something like that. Even though it would have definitely, it would have at least gave itself its own identity. This one really played it safe with the kills, especially when you've got movies that have entries like 3 and 4 and 5 in there where they got some really inventive, really unique kills. And this is way before you can do like CGI stuff and all that. They could have used a kind of mixture of CGI and practical effects to done some really, really good new nightmarish kills. But they did so bad, and did so bad on the makeup too with the remake, that at the end of the day, for me, it was a bust. And that being said, I could still watch it. I did give one of the better reviews that you'll find on on YouTube for this film. Hey, baby. Number 6 is number 6. Freddy's Dead is the next one. Well, at least the next one up, as a being really bad, is Freddy's Dead. Freddy's Dead may be a little bit worse than the remake, but at least it's got a couple of things in there. Like there's a couple of nice set pieces. The return of Johnny Depp for that little cameo, and the super cheesy aspects that they do at the beginning of it. Kitty. But overall, it's a horrible film. Not even the 3D aspects can save it. And the whole dream demon thing that they bring in with all these like dream gods and stuff. Again, it makes the mistake of trying to overly explain a character who's was pretty well explained, and his motives were fairly simple in the first place. You didn't need more than that. You didn't need to add anything onto the mythos. It had done a good job. All right. This is really hard because I actually do enjoy most of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. Next up, though, has to be... I'll go back and forth on this. This is going to be controversial. But it's just one guy's opinion. Everybody's got their own ranking for these films. I would really like to hear your rankings in the comment section down below. Number 4. Yeah, I like number 4. Yeah, it has some great set pieces in it, but it also has Freddy coming back the most ridiculous way of all. The dog pees fire. I know. That's the thing. It's in the movie. I'm not making this up, and they kill off a major character early on. They do get to establish a character that I do really like, and I'm glad to see in the series. But I actually think that, and this is one that's going to be, that I know I'm going to be probably the only person to say this, but I like Part 5. That's why I'm putting it ahead of Part 4. I like Steve Hopkins' direction in Part 5. I think that it got watered down to what it should have and could have been. I like the really dark aspects of it. I like the way that they're going with Freddy. I like the fact that it's the only movie to actually positively show really positively show a parent in the film. If you're familiar with the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, then they're constantly having really shitty parents. The dad, who was like a drunk and semi-abusive in part four, has turned his life around and has become a positive role model in his daughter's life. And as she gets pregnant, doesn't demonize her for it. He actually helps her out, and he's there with her at the end, in kind of like one of the happier moments for Nightmare on Elm Street. It had some really interesting pieces in there, some stuff that I really liked. So I have to say, number 5 gets that spot. There's only 3 left, and how do you do these? So they're all 3 to me are classics, and I can go back and forth on which way to go with the films, but I'm gonna go with. I gotta go with number 2. Although I love number 2, and I think it's one of the best in the series. It has some amazing pieces that and again, a lot of these films are done well. Just some amazing scenes and sequences. I love the cast in part 2. There's some scenes that are like unbelievable, but in a good way. I think that it got like much maligned over the years and really shouldn't have. So what's number 2? Well, that's number 3. And number 3 was like the one that like kind of brought it into like really brought it into the mainstream. Everything pretty much went on. Like some people have number 3 listed. No, as their main one. But for me, number 3 is like it's got some great stuff. The puppet sequence in it, like the Dream Warrior like concept itself was really well done. You can see my cat in the background there, the tail anyway. And but I really enjoyed it. But I got to go with number 1. And I keep going back and forth between it. But number 1 is it's just a classic film. Like they got a great cast in it. Every scene just goes almost immaculate. I love Amanda Weiss in the film. When I was watching the film originally, I did like her character a lot, so I was really surprised when her character got cut off so early on in the film, and in such a cool, shocking way. You have to remember, when I saw Nightmare on Elm Street was when Nightmare on Elm Street first, like when it first came out. So there was no board actually to go by. There's nothing to go by. Like Nightmare on Elm Street was unlike any other series at the time that was coming out. It wasn't like the regular slasher series. It wasn't a guy in a mask going around like chopping up newball teens. This guy was like striking in dreams. He had like the effects were better than I expected for a lot of these type of films. And they just had some really different, unique aspects to them that I love following all the way through. I got to say, as far as the series goes, as far as the franchise goes, I really enjoyed it. Now, they did update the collection with this here Blu-ray. Now, it is a nice Blu-ray. It's like a 5-disc set with a bunch of features on here and some great stuff if you're a Nightmare on Elm Street fan. But doesn't this look more impressive than this? Which do you think looks more nicer on your shelf? Yeah, so needless to say, I still have my my Nightmare on Elm Street DVD set because it is so amazing. And sometimes, to be honest with you, I just like to watch the DVD. I don't like to turn on my Blu-ray player and stuff. I just shove a DVD into my computer, which is attached to my television set, and just like not even switch over because I watch all of my stuff through the computer. So there you go. That's the Nightmare on Elm Street series ranked. And in case you forgot them, from least to best, it is the remake, Freddy's Dead. Did I forget New Nightmare? Part 4. Part 5. Oh, I'm going to change right now. Part 5, because I just realized something. Part 4, Part 5. Okay, let's go. Remake, Freddy's Dead. Part 4. Part 5. Part 2. Part 3. New Nightmare. I love the concept in a nightmare. Part one. That's my order from least to best. And that being said, I don't think there's anything really in the series that I can't watch. Freddy's Dead is a hard watch, I'll be honest with you. I'll be back and we'll be talking about and ranking the Friday the 13th series. Hopefully I won't forget one this time. Friday the 13th. There's two ways to take it when you want to rank these films. Basically, there's the Paramount years, and then there's the New Line Platinum Dunes years. I kind of put those two together. I really shouldn't, because one of those is significantly worse than the rest. So, do I want to rank them all? Yeah, okay. I know I never included Freddy versus Jason in the last ranking, but let's just put it this way. No matter what the remake's like or anything like that on Nightmare on Elm Street, or the remake on Friday the 13th, or whatever one's in the last place, Freddy vs. Jason will always be last place in my book in any of those two franchises. It took what should have been a great concept and it messed up both characters. And that's just my opinion. A lot of people love Freddy vs. Jason. I'm not one of those people. I have it in my collection because I'm a completist, but am I a fan? Not so much. No, not really. The Friday the 13th franchise is actually pretty simple. For most of the films, the killer is Jason Voorhees. He's a killer that goes from wearing a sack to wearing a hockey mask, which comes in part 3, and he wears that all throughout the series afterwards. Jason's origin is left pretty vague and pretty simple in the fact that, and this is the way that I take it. Some people take it in a different way. So this is my thought on Jason's origin. Back in the day, Pamela Voorhees was the cook at Camp Crystal Lake. Jason wasn't the best swimmer, and he was he was a mongoloid kid. He was kind of like that's the word, right? Mongoloid. Picked on a lot. Some camp counselors were supposed to be watching him when he went swimming. They didn't, and Mahemla and the rest of the authorities and the rest of the camp had assumed that Jason, not being a good swimmer, had drowned. Jason, however, had made it to the other side of the lake, and rather than make his way back, had gone into the woods and kind of pretty much just started hunting and killing, and killing his food and staying away, whether in shock or just not wanting to have to deal with everything. Jason felt best when he was alone and on his own. He made a little cabin for himself, and he pretty much stayed away from everybody, thinking that it was best for him, it was best for his mom, and it was best for everybody involved that Jason does what Jason does. This is a lot of me putting stuff in here because from filling in blanks from the series. Jason got to watch the camp off, and then it had been closed down many times. He'd probably seen his mother do things that were highly questionable, and that may not have made him want to go back and exactly reunite with her. She poisoned water and just to keep people away from the camp. Though on the night that his mother came along and killed everybody in the first film, at the end of it, he saw that. He saw her death, and he just pretty much wanted revenge for the death of his mother, but more than anything else. For years upon years, he'd been thought drowned, and he was on his own. He liked on his own. Now that the mother was completely gone, interlopers coming in to his territory and bothering him became much, much more of a problem, and he no longer had a mother to kind of get them to go away. He had to do it himself, and Jason did it significantly more violently than even his mother did in part 1. And being a big guy, it went that way. That happened until part 4, where Jason finally gets killed for the very first time at the end of the film by Tommy Jarvis. In part 5, it is said that Jason was actually cremated, but and during this time, another guy kind of takes over the Jason mantle after his son is killed at the local kind of like the halfway house for like people that had mental issues and are going to be like slowly put back into society. We find out in part 6 that Elias Voorhees, his father, had actually, paid the caretaker to take care of like the both Jason and his mother's like tombstones, because, and the idea of like Jason being cremated seemed more of something that people that kind of lived outside of Crystal Lake, that's probably what they wanted them to think. But from the novelizations and stuff that I read, Elias Voorhees had money and he had influence, and he was an intimidating man. In part 6, Tommy Jarvis, who killed Jason in part 4, comes out of the solemn with a friend and decides that he's going to check to make sure that Jason is actually there. He's found out that Jason wasn't actually cremated, so he wants to make sure that the body is exactly where it is, and Jason is not still going around haunting people, because Jason has haunted his mind for ages. Now Jason at this point has just been a normal person. With a strike of lightning, just like the Frankenstein monster, Jason is brought back, and from then on, it's the saga of zombie Jason throughout the series, and then it goes really crazy. Anyway, that's my theory on the Friday the 13th series. I know I put a lot of stuff in that's not actually in the films, but it's always the way that I've taken it in my mind as from watching the films numerous times, that he was alive, he wasn't dead, he didn't drown. That's my thoughts. Like, obviously that's not, I can't say what Victor Miller or Steve Miner or any of those guys had planned. I'm sure like at the beginning, it was that was just a jump scare. We all know that. But once two came about, and then people ask about why does he have the long hair and kind of scruffiness in part 2, and he has like the bald kind of the mongoloid look that he had from when he jumps out of the water in part 1, in part 3 onwards. Well, the way that I really took that, aside from the fact that there's different makeup artists in every film, overall, except Tom Savini is on 1 and 4, is basically that when we see Jason in the rest of the films, aside from we actually see Jason, we see him like attacking people, we see him coming after people, we see him take the mask off, to use that against like the final girl or whoever he's going up against. Jason in part 2, we never really see him take off the mask in front of her. Amy Steele's character is a child psychologist, and she has built up in her mind what she thinks Jason was, his motivation, and what she thinks he would be like. So when we see that sequence when he jumps through the window, I don't think he's jumping through the window at all. I think it's actually that entire sequence, much like the in the first film, was just a dream sequence, and we're getting to see Amy Steele's character of I think Jenny, her thoughts on what the Jason would look like. It's her dream, it's her reality, it's the way she's going to see it. That's the way I've always taken it, and that's why I think the makeup is significantly different, and in a much bigger way than it is in the rest of the films. Again, a lot of conjecture there and a lot of stuff from just my thoughts of watching the films. And remember, at the end of the day, with these rankings, my thoughts on the films are just one guy's opinion, and I'm sure everybody that feels like a great love the series actually definitely has their own different rankings and has their own thoughts on these here films. Neither one is more wrong or right than the other. It's just through our love the films, what we actually think of them. So let's get to the ranking. Now, it gets harder here because, well, there's the Paramounts, and there's New Lines, and there's the Platinum Dune remake. Now, do I rank the Paramounts and then rank the other ones? It almost seems unfair. So let's do them all like they're together. So the worst Friday the 13th, an actual Friday the 13th, because I want to put Freddy and Jason in there because it's almost like the start of its own franchise. like I said, it'll be at the bottom of like that. Then for me, I can find interesting things in Freddy versus Jason. It's not my favorite. Definitely on neither one I'd go. And it's way, way down the list. So we're just going to leave Freddy versus Jason out of there because it would definitely like rank low, if not one at the bottom of each one. But the worst one for me, Jason-wise, is Jason Goes to Hell. That's a really, really. There are things I enjoy about Jason Goes to Hell, but overall it's a pretty bad film in my opinion. I like that they wanted to do something different with it. I don't think that they succeeded. Actually, I think they failed big time. And some of the reasons may have been beyond their control. For instance, Sean Cunningham wasn't a huge fan of Jason, and he definitely wasn't a huge fan of the hockey mask. He wanted to get him at the hockey mask as soon as possible. Hence the whole storyline with like the basically him being reborn and the heart and yeah. So yeah, that's the worst for me. Next up on the list is, and although I do find this an entertaining film, and there are sequences that I really like, the ending is really crappy. And I really love a lot of the Friday 13th films. I really do. Jason X. Jason X is the next up in the crappy. I know a lot of you guys expect me to say the remake. In the crappy ones for me, but no, I just couldn't get into. I got into it was okay. I mean, I like parts of Jason X. I thought certain things were fun. I thought the holodeck sequence was hilarious, and one of the funniest things of any of the Friday 13th films. Like the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, the Friday 13th franchise is one that I find really entertaining. I can watch over and over again. It's just I got to put some lower, and Jason X goes there. Next up is the Friday the 13th remake. Although I did enjoy aspects of the film, I think my friend actually put it the best in that why he didn't really like it as a Friday the 13th film wasn't like the ample nudity, because that was in a lot of Friday the 13th movies. It wasn't Jason Runs, because that was in a lot of the Friday the 13th movies. It was the kills. He stabbed and he cut and he did a lot of like kind of brutalesque kills, and he put someone up above. But in Friday the 13th, it really is all about the body count. It's all about the kills. So it's not Jason like grabs somebody and crushes their head. It's Jason grabs somebody and crushes their head and the eyeball pops out. Or Jason takes a spear gun and shoots it through the eyes of somebody. Or Jason like puts his hand and rips the heart out. Or Jason slams somebody so hard into a tree that a happy face comes out. It's that extra little moment on the kill. So basically, you could have a regular slasher film where the killer comes up and stabs the person in like this. But in a Friday the 13th film, he stabs and maybe lifts them up and throws them aside. There's just a little extra bit. And for me, that makes a difference. And it definitely did for my friend, who was a huge, major fan of the Friday the 13th franchise. Maybe, yeah, just as much as me. More so, I don't know, but he did make a really cool, like, full Friday the 13th Part 7 outfit with the makeup and mask. He's a makeup guy. Next up is, well, Part 8. Part 8 really, and again, I liked a lot about Part 8. I actually am one of the people that I would prefer the cruise aspect of Part 8 to the New York City part. Now, I do like the sequence where the guy's boxing him on the top of the roof, and he does that one punch that whips off the guy's head. That's really cool. There's a few sequences in Part 8 that are kind of fun, and some that are kind of dumb, including like the aspect of having Jason now not so much like a zombie as he was in Part 6 and 7, but now Jason's a kind of a ghost. He can just appear here and there. And for some reason, even though he was never ever normal in the first place, at the end of the movie, toxic waste goes over Killer Jason, and he becomes a normal boy. The only problem with that is I can see him becoming like, say he comes back to a boy. If, say, you want to go with the fact he's a ghost and he got killed when he was young, I can see him going back to himself as he was young, like a little boy with with the way that he looked. But Jason was never normal. It's not like there was an accident that happened to Jason's face that like scarred him. No, that's the way that Jason was born. That's a big part of the franchise. That's there right from the beginning, and they kind of seem to like forget about that. It seems. There are aspects of the movie that I like. It also introduced Ken Kirzinger, who would play Jason in Freddy vs. Jason, and the less I say about that performance, the better. I don't blame him. I blame the director, Ron Yu, but let's just say Freddy vs. Jason didn't have one of those guys in there, and that's Jason. He just wasn't in that film. That being said, what's next? Well, after part 8... This is easy, actually. Part 7. Although I really enjoyed Part 7, it's a very neutered Halloween, very neutered Friday the 13th film, in the fact that, well, all the MPA was really going hardcore on the Friday the 13th films, and they took out all the gore. John Carbuschler was a fantastic like special effects artist, and he made the most kick-ass looking Jason, in my opinion, ever, and that includes the Tom Savini one in Part 4. I just really love the look of him, and I love the physicality that he does in Part 7. But it was Kane Hodder's first as well. But the mother's death being off screen, the not satisfying kill for the doctor, and just a couple little things like the ending, and certain things that did make sense. Like, why is Jason still in there? If the father drowned in that lake years upon years ago, how come they never dredged the lake to get his body? What did he actually did Crystal Lake really leave his body down below? Like, did he seriously do that? Was that a thing? That they said, now we're sure he's dead. How are you sure he's dead? Obviously you didn't check for the body, and if you did, you do look and say, okay, yeah, he's dead down there, and just kept it there, like that. Like that's the thing that people do. Even Jason doesn't buy that. Next up is Part 6. And here's why. Because as good a film as Part 6 is, there are two glaring problems with Part 6. Thom Matthews is a fantastic actor, but there is no time in Part 6 that I believe that Thom Matthews is playing the Tommy Jarvis character that we have seen in Parts 4 and 5. He is dramatically different. There is no sign of the Tommy that we've seen in 4 and 5. I'm sure that if Thom Matthews had got to come back and do more, and actually do a more serious Friday the 13th film, he would have gotten like more meat to it. But as he is, anybody could have been that character. The fact that it's Tommy Jarvis is really just lip service, because he never comes off as he is Tommy Jarvis. He never seems that broken. He never seems that on edge. Both, Corey Feldman as a kid and John Shepard played Tommy Jarvis with the darkness that didn't show up in the Thom Matthews Jarvis. And don't think that I don't like Thom Matthews, or I don't like his portrayal of Tommy Jarvis. For the script that he is given, and for what he has to do, he does a fantastic job. I really do like Thom Matthews. I just don't think that the script he's given really made him look like Tommy Jarvis. Which brings me to another thing. The humor in this is good, and it's funny, but it totally kills the momentum of the series. Friday the 13th, like it or not, had pretty much been like a slasher horror series all the way through. They thought they couldn't go any further with that, so they zombified Jason, which I think was a mistake, and they decided to not use Tommy Jarvis as the killer, which had been set up in Parts 4 and Part 5, which I also thought was a mistake. And they brought back Jason as a zombie, and they added more humor. So much humor that, to be totally honest, much like the later Nightmare on Elm Street movies, you can no longer take the characters seriously. And that's probably why I like Nightmare on Elm Street 5 a bit more than I like Nightmare on Elm Street 4. Because there are aspects in 5, when he goes back to that darkness that I wanted to see Freddy Krueger do, that at the time became unpopular, because Freddy Krueger was getting darker again in Part 5, and people were kind of used to Jokey Freddy by then. With Part 6, they turned Jason to a zombie. The put a lot of humor within the film, and it's a great film as a film, but as a Friday the 13th film, it stops momentum dead in its tracks. And I know there's a lot of fans of like the zombie era, and that's their favorite era of Jason. And I can't deny that it's great. I mean, like great stuff was done with 6 and 7. But if you really look, that's when the decline starts. Could it have done better if it was given in different hands? If the MPA had been left out of it, could they have gotten back to the scariness of Jason? I don't know. Part 6 did a pretty big job, like wrecking it. So what's next? Friday the 13th. Part. What do you think, Jason? Should I do this? All right. Friday the 13th, the original. Yeah, I know. It's a classic. It's a fantastic film. It's got Kevin Bacon. It's got some great kills. It's got Tom Savini. Why the heck am I putting it below Friday the 13th, Part 5? There's a reason for that. And it's not that Friday the 13th is a worse film than Friday the 13th, Part 5. It's not. Friday the 13th is a much better film than Friday the 13th, Part 5. That's not something that I'm going to debate. It's just my personal ranking in the way that I enjoy the Friday the 13th films, not in the ones that I think are better than the other overall. It's just my pure enjoyment of the film. So everybody's ranking is going to be different in which films that they like. But Part 1, as good as it was, it really didn't introduce us to the killer until the killer comes on as the killer. There are some great sequences in the film. I don't like the fact that you kill a real snake. I know that's a little thing, but it does bother me a little bit. And what the hell is Strip Monopoly and how the hell do you play it? Great kills, a little bit slow. Next up, Part 5. Why did Part 5 win out over Part 1? What insanity has gone? Did I totally lose my mind somewhere along the way? Maybe a little bit. I've watched a lot of horror movies, so it could happen. I like certain aspects of Part 5. I find it very entertaining. I like John Shepard's portrayal of Tommy Jarvis much better than I like Tom Matthews' portrayal of Tommy Jarvis. I like the fact that he's haunted. I like the aspects that of I'm an exploitation guy. I like the nudity, and there's a ton of it in this film. I did not mind Danny Steinman's direction. There's some times when I think it's all over the place. I do think that he throws in too many characters so that aside from like Tommy, which you've seen before, so you've already got an emotional connection to, you really don't get much of a connection to any of these characters. They're pretty much just fodder. And that's an issue. I do, however, like the fact that although I just listed the first Friday the 13th below this one, I do like the mystery aspect of it. I like the fact that in this one here, it pays off, and if you went in not knowing that it was a mystery, then you may not figure out who it is right away. If you go into Part 5 nowadays knowing that Jason's not the killer, but you don't know who the killer is, you may know who the killer is in the first scene. Yeah, you're probably going to figure it out. He has that look. But overall, I did like the cast of the film. I like the nudity. I like the exploitation aspect of the film. I like the way a lot of the kills are done, and I like the oddness of the film. It almost had a quirky. You know, when you're watching a movie in a franchise, like say maybe Amityville 2 or something like that, and you can tell immediately that this director is Italian or it's a European director or something, because it just seems a little different, a little weird. The people don't talk the way that they would like normally talk. There are sequences that just leave you kind of like wondering. Just watch American Virgin and Last American Virgin. Just with the Christmas tree and the oranges. I guess that's a thing. But although Danny Steinman is not a European director, it has that feel. It has an odd, unique, weird feel to it. There's sequences in this film that seems like it's in another time frame. There's one scene that looks like it's almost out of the movie Cruising with these two guys that almost look like they came into the 1950s, circa 1960s era. It has a kind of timeless quality in that aspect of it, and when it switches around from person to person, there are some interesting characters like Demon. There's some. I like Ethel Jr. I really do. I know a lot of people hate those characters, but I think they're hilarious, and for those reasons, I did enjoy the film. So, there you go. Next up, this is really hard. I've changed these up so many times, by the way. Number two. Although number two is my favorite final girl in all the films, and it's one of my favorites in the whole franchise. I go back and forth on which one I love more than the rest. And number two definitely is in the top three. And at different points, number two is my favorite in the whole franchise. But for this list here, which is definitely going to elicit some different, like, don't thumbs me down because I didn't put number one up like higher than number five or anything like that. It's just basically on the not on like that I think number one is worse than number five or I think number six is worse than number. It's just in the order that these I'm ranking these in order that I find them entertaining and rewatchable. That's pretty much it. Number two is it's definitely highly rewatchable. It's a fantastic film. I love almost everything about number two. I don't know why I'm ranking it so low, but I got two more to go, and I got to get them up there. In the number two spot, Friday the 13th, Part 3. Why did it beat number two? Honestly, because more of the characters are likable. It's the first one time you see Jason with the hockey mask. It introduces Shelley. We introduce like a bunch of like really interesting characters, and I did see it in theater in 3D, so that's always been like a really sweet spot for me. So I got to give that the number two spot, and I went back and forth on what the number one spot was going to be. But it's almost Joseph Zito does a great job directing it. Tom Savini comes back with just to do the makeup on it. We have like an incredible cast with Crispin Glover. We've got Corey Feldman. We've got the hilarious death of Rob, which is a plus for me because, oh my God, he's killing me. He's killing me. It just cracks me up every time. And there's that fantastic Crispin Glover dance. And by the time Crispin Glover leaves the movie, everybody knows where that damn corkscrew is. So that's my number one Friday the 13th film. I know that my ranking list is on these here. It's going to be kind of controversial, but as I said before, I'm not listing the movie that I think is the best in the best position. I'm listing the movie that entertained me the most. And with that being said, I'll be right back to wrap this up with a little extra special thing. So what's upcoming on this channel here? Like Halloween's almost over, and by the time you see this, it's probably going to be like Halloween or the day before Halloween. Well, obviously there's a lot of Mon Macabre coming up in the near future, which means there's going to be a lot of focus on a lot of different worldwide genre horror and stuff like that. We're going to talk about some of my favorite directors, including guys like Jess Franco, Dario Argento. I'm going to get into a lot of that. I'll look into doing more ranking lists and more retrospectives if you want to see it. My rankings are not going to be the usual rankings that you're going to see a lot of people do. Obviously, some of the movies that I chose and put in certain positions are definitely, like I said, I watched Halloween Resurrection and actually enjoyed it for the cheesy bad movie that it was, knowing it was a bad movie. So expect lots more of that. And expect lots of surprises, unboxings, openings. You're going to see some retro gaming. We're going to talk about the Switch a bit more. We're going to talk about like the new game Super Mario Odyssey. We'll go into that, and we'll go into like the rave reviews that that's got, and how I think that this may be one of the best years that Nintendo's had in a long, long time. I'll look at some of the other earlier like years. Maybe we'll even look at the different like Nintendo consoles that came out and their opening years, and see if there was a console that could actually beat this in pretty much an opening year for like for a Nintendo console. I'll you get to see a lot of that. You're going to get to see a lot of like horror, be it domestic or foreign. A lot of retro stuff, some stuff on the Switch, just some really cool gaming stuff, and hopefully lots more, including maybe a list down the road of some of my favorite horror books that I like to read, and comics. There's a lot coming. Hope you guys stick with me, and if you know somebody that hasn't watched my channel and my show that you think might like it, please honestly feel free to like share one of these videos, and I don't know, tag me, and just let people that don't know about me know that I'm actually out there. Some of my views are a little on the weird side when it comes to certain films, but I own that and I like that. Just like today, I went out and I bought a Happy Meal. I did actually. I like Happy Meals because I'm not a huge. I like burgers, but I'm not a huge burger fan. And Happy Meal got me Super Mario Tie. I got the Yoshi, by the way. I'm such a big kid. I love it. But I got like a cheeseburger and fries and like this tiny drink, which was okay, because and I also got like a yogurt tube, which I like. Yogurt tube's pretty cool. So you never know what you're gonna get from this channel, but right now, I have to go outside for a bit. Thanks for watching. This is usually the place where I say it's time for tea, and that is coming up in a bit.